I recommend people dream in reverse. What is that?
Yeah.
What is it that you dreamed about, that you were so excited about when you were 5, when you were 8, when you were 10 years old? When you were looking at the world before we sort of became terminally differentiated, as it were, in our one pathway. What was it that really sparked your heart? What was it that was 60 gigawatts of pure, unbridled energy that sparked your spirit, your soul? And look at those 2 or 3 things and think mindfully about them. Maybe, it was locomotives, right? Or maybe it was fire engines. And it's not necessarily that you can go back and be a fireman at this point, but what is it about those that really excited you? Why did those excite you? Maybe you liked fire engines because they were the people who were able to put the fear that is in all of us by nature aside, a fear of being burned in a fire. And they were willing to run into the fire to help another human being rather than running away. So it may not be the fire truck. Maybe it's the spirit. Maybe it's the energy. Maybe it is the interest in community and other humans that drives you.
Welcome to the 5 Flavors of Happiness, hosted by Susan Pieper.
Hi, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for tuning into the 5 Flavors, a podcast all about happiness, how you got it, how you keep it, and how it's changed. Today, I am absolutely thrilled to sit down with board-certified internist, pulmonary critical care physician, and team leader with more than 35 years of experience, founder of Uplift Profits, and just about the coolest title in the entire world, the Chief Happiness Officer, Dr. Mark Lund. Dr. Mark, thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure, my honor to be with you and to talk about this topic and to add value and serve all that are going to hear your beautiful podcast today. So.
Oh, thank you. Well, folks at home, you don't know this, but we were having a little conversation before we started to record, and I was so intrigued by it. I was like, we have to stop because we have to get this on tape. So, Dr. Mark, could you talk to us a little bit about the purpose of work and finding your flow?
Sure. And one of the most important questions, I think, for all of us, many of us are under the impression that our purpose of work is to make money. And money is very important. We need to be able to live. We need to be able to do things in society. But our purpose is really more important. When we have the ability to drive forward and to nurture ourselves, our spirit, our human energy, we have an ability to live just a truly exceptional life. Now, we do have to work. Again, some of us, those come together. Sometimes it's a little more schizophrenic. We have to earn money, but we do something else that allows us to find our purpose. One of the saddest parts, by the way, is a very brief rabbit hole here. 75% of all people today have no idea what the purpose of their life is.
Oh.
And that is just a really sad statistic.
Yeah.
But purpose is really important. So if we look at work as a service to others, whether you're serving through yourself, through a small business, or through a major international corporation, when you are aligned in their vision, in their mission, in their purpose, then you can find happiness, you can find flourishing, you can pursue your purpose within that. Even small jobs that people think are not all that important, they can have significant purpose if we step back and help guide people into their purpose in that. Let's take a young man or woman who's working in a auto repair shop, and they're new in the trade, and all they have to do is put the tire on and attach the lug bolts. It's a meaningless task in their mind until they attach humanity to it. If they attach humanity, then I need to do my job really well, because the car that I'm fixing, someone's daughter, someone's son, a mother with their young children, taking them to school, grocery shopping, they're getting in that. They rely upon me doing my job well, even though it's a relatively small task. So if we start to put purpose to something, then we start to find the ability to find happiness in it. And usually when we live a life of service as a starting out employee, or service as a leader, servant leadership is one of the most important things you can do. We start to help people. We find that we fulfill ourselves and we find purpose. Then the only question is, in that purpose, how do we choose to do it? What are the different ways that we choose in our life to bring that happiness, or to bring whatever our purpose in life is? Whether it's through writing, through music, through drawing, through designing bridges or tunnels, whatever it happens to be. And we find that we are able to do that. We also find that we can get into flow. And I don't know if we want to talk about flow now or later, but that's really important in finding our happiness.
So, folks, we were talking about flow, and I would love to get into this because in my professional career, I work as a creative, and I was telling Dr. Mark about how sometimes I lose track of time, and I don't even realize I'll be working on a campaign. I'll pick my head up, and 4 hours has gone by, and it just goes in the blink of an eye. And he was telling me about flow. So could you talk to us a little bit about flow? And then I really want to talk about how you said 75% of people don't know their purpose. And that is a very upsetting figure. How are there any tangible steps that we can give our viewership to finding their purpose? Because I would imagine once they find that, then happiness will come.
It does. So let's talk about flow for a minute.
Sure.
This is an old concept. It's been around for quite a while, but the man who really studied it and is in a sense referred to as the godfather of flow is Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. And he was a professor of psychology at Chicago, and he really put a lot of his life's work into this. So how do we know that we're in flow? And instead of going into all the granular details of it, you hit it just beautifully. And we've all experienced it at one time or another in our life, where we are engaged in something. We are just sort of in a raptured state. We enjoy what we're doing, likely physically as well as mentally. And we look up and, as you said, 3, 4, 5 hours have passed and we thought it was just moments. Where did the time go? And there's a particular way to get into that. And again, we could spend an entire podcast talking about just these facts, but one definitive aspect is when we are at the cusp. If we think about it, we all have a comfort zone, and from there we have a discomfort or an uncomfortable zone. Then outside of that, there's fear. And as they say, all growth occurs outside of the comfort zone. We can probably learn some things when we're comfortable, but if we're not challenging us, we don't have the ability to grow. So when we are at the edge of our comfort, not way out in discomfort, certainly not in fear, but when we push ourselves, our mastery, and we step just outside of that so that we are accepting of where we are, but we're honing ourselves. I frequently use the analogy of, if we're going to make a knife, it is metal that's put into a forge, heated up, and then it's beaten with a hammer. Eventually, you have to take that knife and you have to put it to a stone, and you now start to hone the edge. But how do we keep that, and how do we continue to make it sharper and sharper? At some point, we have the old straight edge razor, and we hone that with a leather strop. The leather really isn't doing a whole lot. It's not taking off large pieces of metal. It's not beating it anymore, but it's honing it. When we're at that point that we're between that leather and a very fine diamond honing, we are actually making ourselves better and better. We are growing. We're at the limits of our mastery and pushing them just a little bit so that we grow. When you are there, that is one of the keys to stepping into that area of flow. Now, if you can not only enjoy that, and most people, if they become masters at something, will enjoy it because that's what they've pursued. It is said that most surgeons, when they are operating, are in that state because they're always at that. They're at the peak of their mastery. They're doing their work, but everyone's just a little different. We're pretty close inside, but not exactly. So we have a surgeon or an interventionalist, as I used to be, and you're always trying to walk that fine line, understanding what's going on in front of you and also where your mastery is, and trying to push that limit so that you are safely moving forward, growing your skill, but also giving the very best to that patient who has literally put their life in your hands. And at that point, for physicians, we find flow. For you, you have a passion around your creative arts. And therefore, you get into it, but you're also not looking to draw with crayons. You're looking to create something that is always better, is always a little bit sharper. So you are pushing your mastery in something you have passion about, and you enter flow. And flow is really important, not only because it's fun and it's rejuvenating in a sense, but if we look at Martin Seligman and his 5 steps, your 5, points of happiness, 5 flavors. The second is engagement. And really what engagement is flow. You are so engaged in the present moment. You're living in this moment, and therefore you're in flow, and therefore you're also experiencing personal growth. So engagement, in a sense, is personal growth. Engagement with personal growth, pushing your boundaries of mastery, is flow. And that's just a beautiful place to be in your life.
It is. It absolutely is. And then you end up feeling so proud of your work when you're done. And you're like, I did it. And I was able to make a contribution and try this new cool way to do it. But I want to ask you, you had said, and I didn't know this author, the 5 steps of happiness. Could you talk to us about that?
Sure. So Dr. Martin Seligman from the University of Pennsylvania was the one who really sort of focused on this. And he came up with initially the 5, and now there's a 6th pillar to finding happiness. And we go through this as a positive outlook. Things are going to be okay. If you're leading a team, I have what I call positive leadership. It's, tell you what, we have a big challenge in front of us. This is going to be tough. Let's acknowledge the truth. Let's make sure that we continue to have trust with our team. But you know something? I believe in us. I believe in each of you. I believe in us collectively. I know that we can do this, that positive outlook. E for engagement. Again, engagement, living in the moment, being involved, being in flow. R, relationships. All of our relationships. We are communal creatures. So not just our spouse and our family, with our teams, with our friends, with our colleagues, with our community. Having relationships is important. M, meaning and purpose. Again, we come down to what drives us. Viktor Frankl really wrote one of the most seminal books on this, and Man's Search for Meaning. That came out of his time in a concentration camp with the Nazis. And to understand what our meaning is, what our purpose in life is to really be able to weather all storms. It is the superpower, the rocket fuel that propels us no matter what the tumult is, no matter what the chaos is. because life is never a straightforward line. There are
Yeah.
always ups and downs. A is achievement and acknowledgement of that achievement. To feel that you have achieved something and to know that you've been acknowledged for that achievement, for doing a good job in whatever it is. And that can be big or small. It can be big. A mom saying congratulations to their child, winning the Nobel Prize, big. But it can also be small. I'm trying to go ahead and release a little bit of weight. I lost 5 pounds. Let's celebrate. Just not celebrate with the extra cake or ice cream. But so that hits PERMA, positive engagement, relationships, meaning and purpose, and achievement. And then he added another one on, which is vitality, which is really just seeing life around you, being active, being in motion, doing those things, getting out, enjoying nature, enjoying just activity. And those 6 bring about the experience of flourishing. And, it's none of us is going to be always joyful. None of us will always be happy. We have our ups and downs. But the fact is that we can flourish in life through the ups, through the downs, and we can enjoy things. And this is actually so much an important part of human psychology. We understand that if we didn't have some of the lows, we would never have a true appreciation for the highs.
Absolutely.
Disney actually does this. Disney in their theme parks, their food is not known for being the best.
Right.
It's good, but the experience isn't always the greatest. You have to wait in lines, or you have to, whatever it happens to be. And I was reading a book about them one time in luxury service, and it's been a decision, at least at the time of the book being written, that they didn't want to fix all that, because they realized that if they made everything a 10 out of 10 exceptional, it would become boring. So they want to have the islands of 10 out of 10, and they want to surround that with 7 8s. They don't want to surround it with 2s and 3s, but they want to have a differentiation, so you have those peaks of, wow, this is great.
Wow.
Because we enjoy it, because we understand that this is happy, that this is joyful, that this is amazing, but we wouldn't have that understanding. So again, when we look at life, we can say, as I go through life, I realize I'm not always going to be happy. I'm not always going to be joyful.
Right.
But what I can do is I can choose every day to look at things and to work on each of those 6 pillars, so that as an average across your next year, that you will be in a position that you will be flourishing in your life through ups and downs.
Wow, that is so fascinating and so true on a personal level. Because I wouldn't appreciate my job and getting to do what I do if I was always a creative. I wasn't. I struggled and I had to get there, so now I could appreciate it. And another thing you had said about vitality that I think is so interesting is, personally, I am so happy when I'm busy and I get so much done. And I always think, oh, I can't wait for a day where I have nothing to do and I don't have to edit a film and I could just sit around and do nothing. But those days I'm never truly happy. And I end up scrolling on my phone or doing things like that because I'm happier when I'm active, even though I don't think so. In my mind, I think I'll be happier when I rest. I'm not. I am in my happy place when I'm busy. But I want to go back to purpose and that
Okay.
horrible number, that 75% number. How can people find their purpose if they don't know? If they're still struggling? I mean, I was a waitress. That's how I started my career. And I didn't know where I was supposed to go. I did try to make people happy and their dining experience happy, but I didn't know. How can we help people find their purpose?
One of the big things that all of us tend to do, we say, let us ask that existential question. What's the meaning of my life? What's the meaning of life? What is my purpose? Why am I here? And first of all, to simply understand that it is important to be able to step back and to not feel pressure. Take your time, because really, this is a really important question. And it is not something that is, tattooed across our forehead for us to see. So being mindful, but being intentional about it is important. The one recommendation that I have that I think separates a lot of what we do with the people we work with in businesses, as business leaders or as individuals, is we ask a question in a unique way. So, if you ask better questions, you get better answers. If we ask most people how they would try to, or how they've tried to find purpose before, they say, I try to think about, what would I like to do? I'd like to do this, or I'd like to do that. The world is so abundant with opportunities that it becomes a little bit overwhelming, because there's so many things that we might enjoy doing. I recommend people dream in reverse. What is that?
Yeah.
What is it that you dreamed about, that you were so excited about when you were 5, when you were 8, when you're 10 years old? When you're looking at the world before we sort of became terminally differentiated, as it were, in our one pathway. What was it that really sparked your heart? What was it that was 60 gigawatts of pure, unbridled energy that sparked your spirit, your soul? And look at those 2 or 3 things and think mindfully about them. Maybe, it was locomotives, right? Or maybe it was fire engines. And it's not necessarily that you can go back and be a fireman at this point, but what is it about those that really excited you? Why did those excite you? Maybe you liked fire engines because they were the people who were able to put the fear that is in all of us by nature aside, a fear of being burned in a fire. And they were willing to run into the fire to help another human being rather than running away. So it may not be the fire truck. Maybe it's the spirit. Maybe it's the energy. Maybe it is the interest in community and other humans that drives you. And therefore, by dreaming in reverse and finding out those things that you really loved and that energize you, and saying, okay, why is that? Again, intentional review, mindful. In a sense, if we were to take, business language, it's a root cause analysis. What is the cause of my happiness in this? Let's go back to the root. Let's go deeper and deeper. Say, this is what it is. Okay, now that I know that this is what it is, how can I find something? Because that's my purpose. Would you mind if I shared a quick story?
Yo, please.
So I went into medicine, and medicine is kind of like hopping on on a train. Right? You go to college, maybe grad school, then medical school, then residency, then fellowship, maybe an extra fellowship. You go into practice, and so you just sort of take that train along. And you find sometimes that it's either not the right thing for you, or it was, but the circumstances in which you practice have started to change. And unfortunately, that's what it is with medicine, and why so many doctors and nurses are burned out. But when you get burned out and you're far enough along, you literally lose your identity. Because who are you? Well, I'm a doctor. But am I really a doctor? And I actually lost my identity. I didn't know who I was. And I needed to really look at that. And I needed to be intentional. And I give this as an illustration for how to approach what we just talked about. Well, I'm a doctor. Well, all right, wait a minute. Am I really a doctor? No, I'm a physician and I'm a doctor. In the English parlance, when we talk about doctors, what we're actually wanting to say, I feel sick, I want to go to a doctor. No, actually, what you want is a physician, because a physician is a healer. Right?
Okay.
A doctor comes from ancient Greek doctore, and that means teacher, which is why a person with a PhD is a doctor also. So, okay, so I'm a physician and I am a doctor. I love teaching. I love talking, but I'm also a healer. So I'm a teacher and I'm a healer, but I don't know that I want to be a physician anymore. I've done this for so many years, and I added months to years, decades to people being alive. But what do I want to do? If I know that I am now a teacher and I am a healer, then if I heal, I don't just need to heal someone in their body. I can start to heal their spirit in a sense. So I want to now dedicate the last part of my life to adding life to the years that somebody has. So now I went from this place of, I'm not sure of my purpose anymore. I'm not even sure of my identity, who I am, to finding my identity intentionally, going back, thinking about the things that I like to do, moving them forward, finding a new way to be authentic to myself, to serve other people, to serve humanity in a larger world, larger sense, and to do it with passion and purpose, and to be able to continuously remain in flow. Because there's not a single day that I am not personally growing, getting better and better. So I am frequently, if not almost always, in flow.
That's awesome.
So again, it doesn't matter who you are. I started as a doctor. Could be an engineer, could be an attorney, it could be a scientist, it could be a mechanic, it could be anybody. A really good friend of mine started out as a landscaper, but his real passion was driving top fuel drag racers. And he now drives top fuel drag racers, and he's got a team that supports him. But his father also had a problem with COPD, and he created a nonprofit that's called Right to Breathe that supports people with COPD or helps to
I saw
diagnose
that
people.
Right to Breathe online.
Yeah. It's
Oh,
and the passion is, he has passion for this, he has passion for that, but he's now blended both those passions. So he brings Right to Breathe to his races. He helps serve people. It serves his drive for creating something to help somebody with
yeah.
breathing difficulties. It serves part of his soul to drive that race car. And he brings those two things he's passionate about together into just an amazing life of service to humanity.
God, that's awesome. That's just beautiful. And I love what you're saying, because I feel like so much of our lives, we try to hide who we were when we were a kid, and all of our true authentic feelings, because we are trying to live up to what either our parents or society or what we put in our own heads that we should be at a certain age, at a certain time in our life. And it takes us so long to go back and say, wait, that's not who I am. This is who I am. And it's just finding yourself. It's just like we just have to go back to remember who we were.
When we were simpler beings before,
Yes.
there's a wonderful old story, which I won't share in its full part because it's fairly long, but it's based upon a true story from Thailand. It was called the Golden Buddha. And they had to protect this solid gold Buddha from this invading army. And they covered it with mud and plaster of Paris and concrete to make it look like a stone Buddha. And after several generations of being occupied, the army moved off, but people had forgotten that it was real, that it wasn't just a story. And when a highway was put in and the Thai government had to relocate this monastery and they moved it. One of the monks found that there was a crack in this stone. They were very worried because it was this stone Buddha. And if something broke on it, it needs to be fixed. But in looking at it, he saw something glint and he recognized the story. He called for the other monks to come out and they saw that what was deep inside one of these cracks was gold. And they started chipping it off. And they uncovered this beautiful, solid golden Buddha. And people can look that up. The golden Buddha in Thailand, I think it's something like 9.5 foot tall. It's immense. What's the metaphor here, right? We're all born absolutely golden, 24 karat solid gold. And then well-meaning people, our parents, our teachers, our siblings, girls do this, boys do this, girls can't do that, girls do this, boys can't do that. You're not smart enough to do this. You're not fast enough to do this. You're not good enough to play on our team. You have to sit on the bench. And we have all this stuff. And eventually we look in the mirror and we see just a solid chunk of stone. We forget that we're golden. And that's probably what happened to most of those 75%.
Yeah.
But something comes along. Maybe it's an illness. Maybe it's the loss of a loved one. Maybe it's a divorce. Maybe it's losing a job. Maybe it's hearing a message like your podcast. And people say, "Oh, wait a minute. I know there's something better." And all it takes is the courage to start to look. Because as soon as you start to look, we will find a crack because we all have one.
And it does take courage. It does take courage to say, no, I want to be me.
That's it.
Because we wear those masks all the time.
All the time. And there is nothing more beautiful than being your authentic self.
Oh, God, yes. I'm reading this book right now. Oh, I need to have you back. Folks, I didn't ask any of the questions that I sent you. I had no idea our conversation was just going to flow so beautifully. But I'm reading The Alchemist right now. And Dr. Mark, I would love to have you back if you would, maybe early next year. And maybe we could just talk about the book or any of the books that you mentioned, because I would just love to have a book conversation with somebody with such a beautiful insight like you have. But folks, we only have a few seconds because we've run over time. So if you have one more minute, I want to ask you, because I didn't even get to ask you your 5 flavors of happiness, but I do want to do the quick round with you because that's the fun part.
Yes.
Okay. Dr. Mark, I'll ask you 5 quick questions and then you just give me one word or one thought answers. So if you could give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Be authentic to you and don't worry about what others think of you.
Oh, so true. I am happiest when
I am serving my purpose by serving and caring for other human beings and helping them have their best life.
Awesome. If happiness was a place, where would it be?
Oh, that's easy. The Rocky Coast of Maine.
Oh, wow. Beautiful. Do you hike?
I used to, but I don't now. But I just love the Rocky Coast. Instead of the water lapping up on the sand, hitting the rocks, little spray. I love mid-coast Maine, Cape Elizabeth, that area.
Fabulous. Okay, my very last question. If happiness actually was a flavor, what would it taste like?
Oh, that is. What would it taste like? In some ways, I hate to say this, in some ways it's seasonal because part of my happiness is abundance and having variety. So it would be, in the summer, it would be a lobster roll on the coast of Maine.
Oh.
And I also love a really fresh key lime pie. So depend upon the order.
Awesome. I absolutely love that. Well, Dr. Mark, thank you so much for being here today. This has just been such a fabulous conversation. And folks, thank you for sticking with us. And be sure to subscribe so you could see other amazing guests we have on the 5 flavors and come back. Hopefully we'll have Dr. Mark back again. So thank you, everyone. Have a great day.